Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a movie review for the film A Working Man that is currently out in theaters. This is the newest Jason Statham film, directed by David Ayers. He also directed The Beekeeper last year. Unfortunately, I don't think that this movie is even remotely close to being as good as The Beekeeper.
Modern movie review.
Okay, so right off the bat, I do want to go ahead and address this. I personally am not a very huge fan of Jason Statham. I've seen about 7 movies that he's in, 8 if you count Fast X, his one scene that he has in that movie. It's okay. I think that he's somebody who has a lot of fun, and he is one of those actors where it's you know exactly what you're getting with him, and to an extent, he is kind of like a modern-day movie star. Every once in a while, we'll have those discussions of, do movie stars still exist? Is there somebody where, you just put his name on the poster and people will go show up for it? I do think Jason Statham is one of those guys. All of his action movies tend to do relatively well, and if you like Jason Statham, there's a decent chance you'll like this movie. I personally have never really understood the hype until last year, when The Beekeeper came out. And once again, this was directed by David Ayers, who I enjoyed that movie last year. I think that it was really good. I think the fact that it was called The Beekeeper, it had a really weird premise that was super goofy, and the fact that they played into that, and the whole fact, in the movie The Beekeeper, we get a 10-minute sequence at the beginning of the movie where he's doing his beekeeping stuff. He's explaining the science of the beekeeping. He's explaining why he really loves keeping bees and taking care of them, and here's this cool stuff that you can do with the honey, and just seeing his kind of passion for being a beekeeper for some reason. It's really entertaining. It makes where you can connect to the character a little bit more when he starts doing some of his random action stuff, even though it's Jason Statham and he's going to be doing that regardless. It makes it feel a little more earned and a little more oh, he's doing that now. And so seeing that movie do a really good job of kind of building up the premise of, okay, he's a beekeeper and then he's an action man, to go from that to this movie where it's okay, yeah, he's on a construction zone. Let's see him maybe do some construction stuff, being a good team member for this construction crew. We get to see maybe a 20-second scene where he quickly has all his guys huddle up and it's we're gonna have a good day at work today. We're hard workers. That's awesome. And then immediately gets into the action stuff. Doesn't even leave the construction zone before he starts beating people up. And I kind of really dislike that. I think that they didn't do a good job of making it as fun of a movie. Part of the reason why the Beekeeper movie was fun last year was because, one, they had a lot of bee-related puns, which I thought was hilarious. I think that Josh Hutcherson was an incredible villain, and the fact that he was able to play somebody who was so arrogant and over the top, and somebody who you just really wanted to see, get attacked by the Beekeeper, see him get jumped by the Beekeeper. It's somebody you want to see lose, and that movie also had the added benefit of, hey, we know this movie's stupid. Let's just make it as goofy and over the top and ridiculous as possible. Let's have, big, high-ranking government officials being oh no, the Beekeeper. And we don't really get any of that in this Working Man movie. The Working Man movie is supposed to be this really interesting thing because they're going to be we're being attacked and it's just some random construction guy. They don't do any of that. They don't do anything about the fact that he is a working man. And honestly, if that wasn't the title of this movie, I don't even think we would get that 1 30-second scene where he's working in a construction zone. It literally makes no sense why they call this movie A Working Man. It doesn't make any sense why they don't just have him be a random action guy. And it's so weird how little they actually cared about making it a working man movie, because that's arguably the best part of the Beekeeper movie, which is the last, I know I keep comparing them, but it's the last movie that Jason Statham was in. It was the last movie that David Ayers directed, and they worked together and they worked really well in that movie, and that movie was an incredible early of the year kind of sleeper film. It was a very fun time. And so to go from that to this movie is miserable. And I will say, earlier I mentioned Jason Statham, kind of a big movie star. He's somebody who can draw in a lot of people to come watch this movie. I think another thing that drew people to this movie, Sylvester Stallone helped write this film. I think he co-wrote it. That's incredibly cool. I think that's fun. You can kind of see some of his inspiration in some of the moments. And I definitely think that there is a lot to enjoy about this film if you're going to just see dumb, fun action. But I also think this movie has a really hard time with there being very little stakes. At no point in any of the fights does it feel like there's even a chance that Jason Statham is going to get hurt. And I think that action movies need to be able to have that balance of, okay, well, our guy is taking a couple of punches or our guy is taking a bunch of hits. He's fighting down groups of 20 people at a time. And at no point do they ever even get a punch in on him, or they ever shoot him or anything like that. And I think that also just takes me out of this movie. And I wouldn't have a problem with that in this movie if they played into the fact that this is just a goofy, silly film about a random construction worker that's going around and killing people now. And they don't do that. And I think that that's really what kind of makes this movie not work for me. This movie, for people who do not know, there is a 19-year-old girl. She gets kidnapped and she gets sold into sex trafficking. And Jason Statham's character is approached by the parents of this girl, and they're like, hey, we know what you used to do, which they're so vague about what he used to do. Like, he used to be in the military. They don't really explain much. I think that they're like special forces or whatever. That's awesome. But they're like, we know what you used to do. And it's like, they make it sound like he's like a private investigator and he can like track people down. And it's really weird because like, he was just like a military dude. But yeah, now he could all of a sudden like track people down, find clues, be like a little private investigator. It's interesting. I guess he's like a super spy now. It would make more sense if he was like an ex-FBI agent or ex-CIA agent. He was just a random military guy, but I digress. That's, you know, stupid logic in a stupid film, and they don't even play up the fact that this is a stupid film. That's my main thing with this movie. Every flaw I have with this movie would work if this movie didn't have such a serious, dark, nitty-gritty tone for no reason at all. But that being said, so, like I said, 19-year-old girl gets kidnapped. She gets sold into sex trafficking. The next 3 days later, because she gets kidnapped on a Friday night, and Jason Statham goes into work on a Monday, and they approach him and are like, hey, our daughter got kidnapped. Would you please be able to find her? For whatever reason, the police officers aren't able to do anything about it. And Jason Statham is like, no, I can't. I left that life behind me, whatever he says. And then goes on like a little day trip to his friend who lives in the middle of nowhere and decides, you know what, I am going to try to save that girl. And then he drives back. And so now it's been about 4 days since this girl has been kidnapped, and he's just now starting, and he has like the tiniest little breadcrumbs of like the last place where people think that they saw her. And so he goes to this bar and he's trying to figure things out, and he's like, okay, well, there's a security camera here. I'm going to potentially try to like figure out, you know, who might have taken her. He gets in contact with the bartender. He's doing his interrogation stuff, whatever. And then, you know, he finds out a little bit of information, and then he goes home to his daughter, spends a regular day with his daughter. Like, you know, like there's no sense of urgency whatsoever. And then another day passes, and then he has, you know, a name that he could go track down. And then he goes to track this guy down. He beats him up or whatever. And then eventually people come into his apartment. He murders that guy. Zero information. And then he kills 2 more people. Once again, zero information. So now he's camping out, watching this person's, you know, apartment, because he's like, hopefully somebody's going to have to come to this apartment eventually. There's 3 dead bodies here. And they do. And then he finds out a little bit more of information. And then another day passes. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, this girl got kidnapped and sold into sex trafficking. And it's a week later. 1, you would definitely never be able to track her down. 2, there's a decent chance she would be dead by now. 3, he is dragging his feet so much, and it makes absolutely no sense. And that is the first 30 minutes of this movie. It keeps taking longer and longer and longer. And I say, that's like, he finds like one name, right? And that's the person he goes, he kills that person and then kills a couple more people. Then he gets another name, right? Tracks that person down, asks them a bunch of questions, interrogates them, kills that guy. There's about like 6 names on the list. He goes to a bunch of different bars, a bunch of different clubs, meets a bunch of different people, randomly becomes a drug dealer for the mafia for a short period of this film. Yeah, I have no idea. That doesn't make any sense, but he has to wait, once again, another full day before he can get his supply of drugs. And then like a week later, they have like a meeting so that he can become like a drug dealer for the mafia. So now it's been almost a month is how it feels in the movie, at least. Obviously, they don't do an incredible job of like mapping out the timeline for us, but it feels like it's been a month since this girl has been kidnapped, and he hasn't done anything to actually try to figure out where she is yet. And he literally shakes hand and meets the person who would be able to know where she is, would have a clue where she is a part of the reason why she got kidnapped. And he literally shakes his hand because he's doing a deal with him, and now he's being a drug dealer for this guy. And it's like, what the hell is going on with this movie? Why should we as the audience care about what's going on in this film when the person who's tracking down this girl has zero sense of urgency? Like, it's just painful to me. And like I said, every single action sequence that he gets into, it doesn't feel like there's even a chance of him dying. So it literally just feels like playing a video game on not even an easy mode, like a beginner mode, where you literally can't lose the video game. And it's so painful to me. It's not very entertaining. There's no comedy in it, which I think, once again, David Ayers and Jason Statham, they just did the Beekeeper movie, which was hilarious. So to go from that to this super serious, dark and gritty tone, and then we don't have any like emotional ties to any of the characters. Jason Statham is so one-dimensional, it's not even funny. this film just sucks. It's so bad. And then a lot of the sets feel incredibly cheap. Like a lot of times they're like running through the woods or they're on like some random back roads. They go to the same biker bar like 3 times. They go to a diner that feels incredibly lifeless and not lived in at all. There's just so much things about this movie that I could complain about and nitpick to death. And I think that my biggest problem with this movie is just the fact that it's so unrealistic, and they could have played into that. And it would have worked because people like that these movies are ridiculous. And instead, they try to make it a serious movie. They try to make it seem like something that could happen in real life. And it just wouldn't. That's just not how that works. And it wasn't good. I didn't like it. I wasn't a big fan of it. If I had to give this movie a rating on a scale of 1 to 100 to give it kind of a grade, I gave it about a 51. I think that the action sequences are good enough that it is worth watching, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I definitely will not be watching it again. And I genuinely feel like it almost is a waste of time to see this movie. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. If you saw it and you did enjoy it, please feel free to let me know what you liked about it down in the comments below. I would definitely like to have my mind changed at least a little bit about this film. But that being said, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.